Hello, my lovely people. So many of you know that I have written 3 angel books. These are novels. And if you love a good romance, a good laugh, a good giggle, and you love everything that's spiritual and universal and angelic, you're going to love these books. It's a trilogy of 3 books, and it starts off with Sarah in her mid-30s with a chaotic life in book 1. And by the time we get to the end of book 1, she's sorted and happy. Book 2, Angel in My Heart, sees the relationships develop as she grows up and older into her 40s. And book 3, Angel in My Fingers, sees her develop and grow even more, with the angels all around them and her family all of the time. And so I thought, well, you don't know anything about my books, so I'm going to give you a little prologue. Sarah is having a bad day. At 37 and a half, life is going nowhere fast. She's been dumped by her latest boyfriend, again. She's lost her latest job, again. And her mother's driving her mad, again. To top it all, she can't even have a moan in peace without Clarabelle piping up every 2 minutes trying to cheer her up, again. Clarabelle is, of course, Sarah's guardian angel, whose job it is to constantly keep Sarah's spirits up. An annoying distraction, to say the least. Clarabelle certainly has her work cut out where Sarah is concerned. Having reached rock bottom, Sarah reluctantly, very reluctantly, accepts Clarabelle's help, growing gradually from a chaotic, lost young woman into the person she always wanted to be. With the angel's help, she is ready at last for her soulmate Simon to enter her life. Throughout her journey, a team of angels have regular inter-agency meetings, mapping out and planning Sarah's life for her, often getting it very wrong with hilarious results. Sarah's story brings hope, magic and inspiration from the beginning right through to its uplifting conclusion, drawing the reader into an emotional roller coaster that will make you laugh, cry, and ultimately leave you with a smile on your face and quite possibly with an empty box of tissues. Clarabelle sat on cloud 322 with her brother, musing the problem. "I just don't know what to do with her, Clarence," she sighed. 3 days and nights she's been crying now, and nothing I can do or say is snapping her out of it. Nothing at all. I just don't know where to turn to next. Clarence patted his sister's wings reassuringly. Her feathers were flat, he noticed, flattened by her worry over her ward. "It'll be all right, Clarabelle dear, really it will. Don't give up. Don't lose the faith. She'll get there in the end, promise." "I'm going to get sacked if I don't sort this soon, I'm sure," she worried on. "Demoted. I'll end up down in transport with Frank and Fred if this goes on. 20 years and no progress at all. What will they think of me upstairs?" "Now don't panic, my dear. She's about as low as she can get now. Rock bottom, I'd say, which means there's only one way to go, and that's up." "It's not just that, Clarence. It's my Ruby review next week. I just can't go in there and say to the bosses, 'No progress,' again. I just can't. 2 a year for 20 years, and each one's been the same. 'Anything to report, Clarabelle?' they ask, and me saying, 'No, sir, no progress.'" Her head hung in shame at the thought of it, hoping and praying she wouldn't have to say those dreaded words yet again. "Well, my dear sister, you did ask for a challenge when you took this one on, didn't you, eh?" He smiled as he looked at her reassuringly, gently. He'd done his best to support her, to be a mentor to her over these years, being that much more experienced than her, but he wasn't sure he'd been much good at all, really. "Challenge, yes. Impossible, no," she was saying now, a quiet desperation in her voice. "I need a miracle, I tell you." She looked longingly at him, hoping that her big brother would be able to come up with a solution, a plan, anything. They looked down at the cloud in unison as they pondered, noticing its lumps and bumps. Don't make them like they used to, they decided. Peeking over the side of the cloud, they looked down onto the sleepy small town far below them where Sarah lived, somehow hoping the town would give them the answer if they looked for it long enough. It gave no reply. Redfields was a big village, a pretty high street with a few shops, a chapel and an old pub, the cricket ground and pavilion, the small school, the duck pond in the centre with its willow trees set amidst open parkland, the whole thing wrapped up and parcelled by fields of rolling countryside. The larger town of Redville lay 8 miles east, the main road between the two, busy at this time of day, rush hour. They watched with interest, distracted for a moment as the people and traffic rushed here and there, intent on getting to work and school, their attention fully focused on their busy lives, completely oblivious to this interaction taking place high above them on cloud 322. Peering down at the town, their minds on the problem at hand, they both jumped with a start as a dark figure flew past them at speed, descending towards downstairs, a long cloaked shadow of blackness trailing behind. "Hi, Frank," Clarabelle shouted after the figure, waving. "That wasn't Frank, that was Fred," corrected Clarence, thinking how they really should slow down. Giving everyone a start like that, most unnerving, he thought. "Was it? Oh, I thought it was Frank," declared Clarabelle. "Though all these grim reapers look the same, don't you think?" Agreed Clarence, watching the reaper. They did go fast, and being so dark and shadowy it was difficult to tell them apart, although when they did slow down long enough to stop for a chat, you always knew which was which. He turned his attention back to his sister. She looked so lost, bless her. "So what are you going to do about your Sarah then, my dear?" he asked. Clarabelle shrugged in a defeated manner, sighing deeply as she raised her eyebrows and her shoulders at the same time. This is most unlike her, thought Clarence, very worrying indeed. "More guidance, help and support?" he suggested kindly. She shrugged again, lost as to find the solution to the problem that was her Sarah. She shook her head. "I don't know, Clarence, I just don't know," she said sadly. Clarence didn't know either. There must be a solution. He just had to find it. He thought about his suggestion of more support, dismissing it quickly. It wouldn't work. Hadn't worked so far, had it? Not in 20 years. "Mind you, you've tried that repeatedly. Doesn't work," he added, scratching his head. "There must be a solution. There simply must." Suddenly, a new idea came to him. Or, he hesitated, thinking it through slowly, how about maybe if a few more things go wrong? We're always trying to make it better, but what if we made it worse instead? I think it's time for a new strategy, Clarabelle. If she gets to the point where she gives up, and she's close now, she'll have to turn to you, have to let you help her. We need her to let you help her, to get you through this review. Yes, I think if a few more things go wrong, that should do it. Clarence beamed, positively beamed. This should work, he was sure of it. They tried everything else. Yes, this would work, it simply had to. He grinned at Clarabelle. She'll get there eventually, your Sarah, promise. Just keep plugging away. She can't resist your help forever. Yes, maybe that may work. Make it worse for her, not better. Clarabelle felt a hint of hope and gently began to smile. Most of them downstairs turn to us lot when the chips are really down, don't they? Maybe a few more chips then. But what could they possibly create to go wrong for Sarah that would encourage her to let them help them at last, she wondered. Her feathers began to lift as she saw a possible solution to the problem that was her Sarah. It was simply a matter of finding something more to go wrong, rather than trying to put things right. Nothing to lose, she chirped and radiated a beam that shone all around her, illuminating her faded halo back to its natural brilliance. Hi, Fred, they both called as the dark angel flew past them again, this time on his way back upstairs with his newly collected soul, closely followed by a beautiful white angel trailing behind him. Hi both, shouted Fred as he flew past them, breaking the speed limit again. Come on, Ursula, he shouted, looking behind him at the trailing angel. We haven't got all day, you know. I have to get this one upstairs. Ursula flew faster, trying her best to catch them up, but these grim reapers, blimey, they just flew so blinking fast. Clarabelle and Clarence watched as the three shadowy figures continued on their journey, the two angels and the retrieved soul, on their way to upstairs for the review. I don't know how I'll feel when he comes for me and Sarah, you know, Clarabelle admitted to her brother. But that's a long way off yet. Still have years to go before he comes for her. I think we're down to 52 years, 3 months, 15 minutes and 35 seconds before it's her turn. I just hope it isn't going to take me most of that time to make her happy. Although the way we're going, I'll be lucky to get her in time for Fred, or is it Frank, at all. Now there's a thought, Clarabelle dear. I have it. I have the answer, the solution. Have to clear it with upstairs first, of course. We'll need Fred's help too, if he can slow down long enough. And what's his name, Thingy, the one in charge of the tunnel. Who? Oh, you mean Huber, the manager of the Tunnel of Light, where the souls are collected from. Oh, goodness, Clarence, I'm not ready to hand my Sarah over to Fred yet. She's got years left in her still. I know we want something to go wrong, but I'm not letting my Sarah be killed off. No, my dear. I wasn't thinking of handing Sarah over to the Reapers, not at all. But we said we need a miracle, yes? Someone could nearly die, right in front of her, of course, scare her a little. Then you could do a bit of life-saving, a little miracle. Show her your power, that should get her attention, maybe even a little respect. She'll start listening to you then. You never know. She may even surrender completely and let you do your job, for once. Clarabelle thought about it for a moment, then beamed happily. She turned to Clarence thoughtfully. It seems like a good plan, Clara, but who's around her that we could miracle on? We can't go causing illness. That's not allowed. And it would have to be someone already destined for a problem, and be someone close to her that she cares about, or it wouldn't have a big enough impact. You leave it with me, my dear. I'll see what we can sort, but it's going to have to be quick if we're going to get you through this Ruby review without you being sacked. Next week, is it? Well then today. Yes, I think today. We shall arrange a little miracle for today. Clarence scratched his head again as he thought it through. May have to bring something forward. I'll need clearance for that. Give me a few hours. I'll need to talk to Fred. He does get excited when we have some near-death experiences, as you know. I'll need to make sure he doesn't get carried away and cart them off completely. Just need him to keep them in the tunnel for a little while, give you a chance to do your thing. Absolutely, and you make sure he gives them back, whoever it is that you choose, Clarabelle said firmly. She knew what Fred was like, and Frank was even worse. Always disappointed when they had to give a soul back. Both of them sulked for days. But she wasn't having any proper death around her, Sarah. Oh, no, not on her watch. A pretend one would be all right, mind, just as long as it was in everyone's best interests, of course. Clarabelle's wings were full again, Clarence noticed, full of hope and happiness. Thank goodness. Her halo was glowing all around her as her faith restored. It'll be all right. He'd help her to get Sarah where she needed to be. They just needed to pull a few favours, or she really would be in trouble with the bosses. Clarence knew they'd been making allowances upstairs for Clarabelle's continued failure. Sarah was, after all, her first ward, and she hadn't long qualified as a fully fledged guardian angel when she took her on all those years ago, bless her. She couldn't be expected to get everything right, and to be fair, Sarah was a pig in nightmare, so resistant to help. just like a lot of them down there. Just didn't know what was good for her. Poor Clarabelle. Go on then, Clarabelle dear, off you go. Back to it, Clarence instructed. I'll meet you a bit later today once everything's in place. And he flew off to make his plans. Clarabelle felt so much better. She beamed with delight as she watched her brother disappear. It will be all right. We'll sort it, she chirped to herself. And a miracle. I do love a miracle or two. Just makes the day. Smashing.